Hello everyone, thanks for joining us. We are here tonight at the Harbour Arts Centre in Irvine, where we are joined with Coulson Tennant and Saskia Coulson. They're going to give us a guided tour of their After It's Gone exhibition, which is on until the 19th of September, and that's part of our Everything Flows programme of exhibitions and events. So do check our website for more information on the exhibitions that are happening across the west coast of Scotland, and our range of online talks are coming up as well. So without too much further ado, I'm going to hand over to Colin and Saskia, who are going to guide us around their wonderful exhibition. Feel free to add any questions or comments into the feed, and we'll do a wee Q&A at the end. So yeah, over to you guys. Thanks very much. Cheers.
Thank you very much, John.
Thank you.
And thank you very much, Street Level and the Harbour Arts Centre, for having us and hosting this exhibition. So my name's Colin, this is my wife Saskia, fellow collaborator and general partner in crime. But we've been working together for about 5 years now on different photographic and film projects. And yeah, the work here today is sort of made up of 3 smaller bodies of work. And we're very much delighted to be part of the Everything Flows project. So I'll hand you over to Saskia.
Yes, thank you again. Thanks for everyone for joining us. We're going to start with this wall here, and like Colin said, the exhibition itself is a combination of several different projects. And this wall here actually is a collection of a work in progress project called Southern Sonnets, which we've been making primarily down in Antarctica. And we do this, we've gone down there for several years now, and we've been collecting and creating this body of work, and we hope to return again soon, so that's why it's ongoing. And when we're down there, we actually capture quite, we have amazing wildlife encounters, and we capture quite a lot of wildlife photography. And we're always looking as part of our practice for something that's maybe a little bit more abstract or unique in composition. And so this first image here was something that really caught our eye when we were in a place called Sierra Cove in Antarctica. And it was this sleeping leopard seal. And the leopard seal is an apex predator down in Antarctica. So they're known for being quite vicious and quite scary to some people, even though they're actually quite kind and have been known to try and feed human beings. So they're quite interesting creatures. But what we were really interested in was this actual way that it was lying down and sleeping, and also how the iceberg and the ice, which it was lying down on, actually framed its head perfectly, and it was that sort of thing that really caught our eye. And what we really look for when we're actually making images down there, we're always looking for something a little bit different, something that we've maybe not seen before. So with that said, I direct you down to this image here, and this is an image that was actually taken from inside our cabin in our vessel. So when we travel down to Antarctica, we travel by ship, and we're often looking outside of our cabin window looking for the next image, but actually in this case the image was from the cabin itself, because the waves were splashing against the window, and there was an iceberg, and this was taken as we were leaving Antarctica for the season, so it's one of the last photos that we've taken there. And also when we're there, we take quite a lot of photographs of different types of ice as well. It's something that we find is really fascinating, because ice is so variable, and the elements of ice, water, and air, and those elements combined, we find is really interesting. So here's a collection of different photographs that we've taken of icebergs that we've seen down in Antarctica. And actually these two, even though they're paired together, were taken on completely separate days and at separate locations as well. And what was really fascinating about this image in particular is that the ice had created a cavern inside of it, so that every time the swell came into the iceberg, it created this big burst of water that would come out of the top of it. So something like that is quite unique. And special for when you're down there in Antarctica, and that's really what caught our eye when we were taking that photograph. And then with these two images here, like I say, we take a lot of wildlife photography, but we're always looking for something that's a bit different. and kind of, you know, we like to experiment with our photography making and our wildlife encounters. So for instance, this was taken off the side of our vessel. We get a lot of bird life that come up to the vessel that we're on, and they enjoy kind of flying through the airstreams that are created by the ship. So in this case, it was a southern brown skua that was flying by the ship, and it was quite late at night. You know, you get quite long days during the summer months in Antarctica, and in this case, it was probably about 12 o'clock at night, and the light was still out, but it was almost like a sunset light that had lit it up, and we were experimenting with the long exposure to create this sort of ghostly image of that bird. And also down here is another image that is an image of a humpback whale. And humpback whales can be quite difficult to photograph sometimes because you only see them sort of popping out of the water. We actually use quite a lot of drone photography as well to capture humpbacks because it gives a unique perspective. But for this, the humpback whale is coming out and it's feeding. You can see that because its mouth has been gulping in water, and it gulps in water and then filters out the water and keeps the krill inside of its mouth. And we always really love seeing humpback whales down there, and we've seen a lot more in the past couple of years, which has been great. It means the population is increasing and it's coming back from the whaling days where that was almost nearly depleted. The issue around humpback whales feeding, they come down to Antarctica to feed, and the problem right now is that there's a lot of fishing vessels down there, and they're basically trawling the ocean for krill. And they're taking quite a lot of the krill out of the food system, and krill is a keystone of the food system down in Antarctica, so it's becoming harder and harder for humpback whales to feed, and becoming more competitive for them to feed as well. And it's not only them that rely on the krill, but many other creatures such as penguins too also eat the krill, so that's a bit of an issue that's happening at the moment. So I'm going to pass you over to Colin, who's going to talk a little bit more about our work over here.
Yeah, hello. So Saskia has just been describing some of the work that we create in Antarctica, and this collection of images is actually from the opposite side of the world. This is from the Arctic, and we have spent quite a bit of time in various locations in the Arctic. These two images at the top here are actually from the Canadian Arctic, a place called Ellesmere Island. And this first image here is actually quite an interesting sort of story. We were out on a small rib boat checking out the location, and it was very misty, so we couldn't really see a lot at the time. And then every sort of 30 seconds to a minute, there'd be these large sculptural pieces of ice that would just appear out of the mist. And this image pretty much sums up that experience. And as you can see, we've got the kittiwake birds that were resting on top of the ice. And it was such an interesting and just a fabulous experience to be out on the water, sort of navigating through the mist, and all of a sudden you'd have these beautiful sculptural pieces of ice appear in front of you. And you can see with these four images here, there's a really strong colour palette that you find in these polar regions, and that's something that we think about when we're making these images. And there's a lot of texture, there's a lot of pattern, and that's something that we try to bring out with the photographs that we make. This image on the top right hand side here, this is actually a detail of one of the glaciers from that area. And you'll notice when you see the film that we're going to show at the end of this talk, we do use drones for some of our photography and filmmaking, but this particular image here was actually just shot with a long lens, a 400mm lens, and we've sort of zoomed right into a detailed part of the glacier. And again, just we really love those textures and the sort of abstract patterns that these huge pieces of ice can create. And the image on the bottom left-hand side, that's actually some sea ice, and it's on a different location in the Arctic. This was just north of the Norwegian archipelago island of Svalbard. And the interesting thing about this image here is that we're actually only about 400 nautical miles from the North Pole. And you can see the sea ice here has melted, and this was in the summer, the Arctic summer basically, so about a month after this the sea ice would be starting to form again and freeze over. But what's a little bit alarming about this is that technically we shouldn't have been able to get that close to the North Pole. The vessel that we were in, the ship that we were in, doesn't have like a certain ice classification, like an icebreaker to break through the ice. But because the Arctic ice is melting at such an alarming rate, it's now allowing sort of more standard vessels to get even far north. So yeah, again, we're playing with the sort of abstract and the textural qualities and using the ice to create these images. But there is, even though there's a beauty to this image, it's actually quite an alarming story behind it. And again, we've got a detail here from a similar scene in a similar location of a kittiwake bird. And this image over here, just behind us, is from Svalbard also. And it was just a snapshot. The wonderful thing about being in these polar regions is that the weather can change instantly. And you can go from a real sort of overcast, cloudy, ice, sort of really cool colour palette to these bursts of orange glows of sunlight to really dark skies in a matter of minutes. And it just kind of shows the real difference between a colour palette from here to here, and as I said, that can happen in a matter of minutes. So yeah, I'm just going to talk a little bit about another body of work that we've been developing, and it's slightly closer to home. This is actually Bass Rock, which I'm sure some of you will know about. It's an island just off the coast of North Berwick on the east coast of Scotland, and it's actually got one of the largest colonies of gannets in the world, actually, on a single island. And it's a truly magnificent place. And these two images here, it's actually quite lovely to see them, to see the exhibition installed like this, because the image in the centre here was the very small, rickety boat that we used to first go out and land on the island. And you probably can't see too much detail at the moment, but the closer you get to the island, you just start seeing these speckles, dark speckles or light speckles in the sky around the island. You're not quite sure what it is, and as you're getting closer and closer, they seem to be getting more and more, and then all of a sudden you realise, well, it's actually just thousands and thousands of birds. And this sort of vinyl image in the background here is what greets you when you get to about 100 metres from the island. And it's truly mesmerising, particularly when you arrive in a really small boat like that. There's birds all around you, the sound and the smell, it's really quite incredible. But I love seeing these images together, because this was essentially our view as we were approaching the island, and it really just brings back that memory of that first landing that we made. And we were working on a project with another photographer, and it was a story about bird migration. And we actually spent 2 days on the island. We stayed there overnight and slept in the middle of the bird colony, which was an experience in itself. Yeah, so this is just a little snapshot of some of the work from our Bass Rock story. And we're in the process of making a short film about Bass Rock as well. So yeah, I'll pass you back over to Saskia.
Thank you. Yes, so we have one final image, and it's here. And again, it comes from the Southern Sonnets series that we've been working on, and it's actually an image of King George Island, which is the largest island in the South Shetland Islands, and that is north of the Antarctic Peninsula. And what's interesting about King George Island actually is that it's 90% glaciated, which means it's 90% of the land mass has ice on it, or glaciers on it. And that's compared to the peninsula, which is 97.3%, so there's obviously quite a difference. And what's been interesting and quite sad for Colin and I to see over the years that we've been working in Antarctica is that the ice has been depleting, and we can see that when we work down there, but it's also been scientifically proven as well. But so that image is quite an interesting one for us, because obviously it's capturing a moment in time where the ice is changing in this very important part of the world. So to finish our gallery walk and talk, we are also going to share with you our film Fractured, which is a film that we made last year, but encompasses work that we've been capturing over the years that we've been working down in Antarctica. And it is about the tension between the natural and the digital worlds. And the aim is to kind of spark a conversation about how, as our natural world is depleting, our digital world is increasing. And at some point, maybe the only way that people can experience these natural worlds is through archival or digital material. So that's kind of the premise of our film, and we are going to just screen it with you now.
thank you very much, guys. That was a great film and a great talk. But I think I'm going to kick things off. It's not so well. I guess it's kind of a question, but obviously after the year that everyone's had, not being able to travel, and obviously your projects involve a lot of kind of travelling, going to far-flung areas around the world. But actually, recently you guys were able to get back into travelling. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your most recent trip?
Yeah, no, we were. Yeah, like you said, we've not been able to go anywhere for a long time, which in some ways was kind of nice because it let us sort of have a break and reflect on the work we've been making. But just recently, as in about 5 days ago, we just returned back from Iceland, and that was our first trip in a long time. And we were working for an expedition company who's often one of the companies we work with when we go to Antarctica or the Arctic. And we got to see some incredible places. There's an active volcano in Iceland just now. I'm sure everyone's seen a lot of those images. So we were fortunate enough to see that and photograph that. And also we visited the highlands in the area and could photograph some of the glaciers and the ice caps there. So it was a really amazing experience, and also allowed us to create more work that will probably feed into the work we've talked about today.
Yeah, definitely. I think we came back with quite a few shots that we feel like could develop these bodies of work, which is really great.
Yeah.
And we also got to see various types of wildlife as well, like Arctic foxes, and it was a good trip, and we feel very fortunate that we were able to travel a wee bit again.
Yeah, and we do have a sort of project lined up where we're going to Greenland to make a couple of short films about Greenlandic artists, and we're hoping to do that in the next few months if restrictions allow us to do so. So yeah, we're managing to get travelling again, which is great.
And obviously this is part of the Everything Flows exhibition trail, and as well as being a celebration of our coasts and waters, there's also kind of a strong environmental theme throughout a lot of the exhibitions that we've been putting on. And I guess travelling the places you do and making the pictures you do, you guys probably have seen kind of first-hand the effects of climate change and things like that. And so do you feel that, photography and videos and stuff can be a kind of vehicle for change? Do you have that in mind when you're making your work? Do you see that as a purpose, or is it really just about immersing yourself in those places?
It's a bit both, I would say. I mean, we definitely feel like photography and filmmaking has a massive role to play in telling that story of climate change and actually advocating for people to, make small changes in their lives. And there's lots of amazing collectives like Everyday Climate Change and lots of other photography collectives that also do similar work. But what we always try to do is capture environments and tell the stories through what we would be missing if things keep going the way that they are and we don't do things to change them. We want to make sure that people understand that there's still very much a lot of natural beauty in the world, and that's what we need to be protecting.
Yeah, I think we very much hope that photography, like still and moving image, can sort of add to that discussion. That's why we're making this type of work. It's not lost on us that by travelling you're having an impact yourself, so it's something we're very mindful of. But the reason that we still do that is because we feel that we can come back and tell these stories and hopefully be able to join the conversation and be able to present things like glaciers and wildlife and the story of the ecology of these remote places in a visual way that might sort of reach out to greater audiences if we hadn't had the chance to go there. So yeah, we very much hope that they have an impact and it continues this discussion about the climate crisis.
So I've got a couple of questions on the Facebook. One comes from Colin Ray, who says, "Thank you for sharing your powerful and challenging work. How did you do the aerial and underwater footage? The conditions look extreme."
Yeah, they are extreme. So I think I mentioned in the talk that we do use drones. And we also have like an underwater housing for our digital SLR camera, so we shoot stills and moving image on one camera, and basically that's how we do the aerials and the underwater. The aerial shots themselves with the flexibility that drones give you now, it really does enhance the tools that a filmmaker or a photographer has to create images. And just being above a glacier or being above large chunks of ice, it kind of opens your eyes to those kind of patterns and textures and a landscape in a different way that you would be able to see from the land. And Sas will maybe be able to talk a bit about the underwater stuff, because you do most of that.
Yeah. Well, I was also going to just say about the aerial stuff as well, is that quite often we work with a lot of scientists, marine biologists and geologists as well, and they're tapped into different research projects in these areas, and we'll also give them photographs of maybe like bird colonies, penguin colonies. We do that quite a lot. So they can keep like an account of how many penguins are in a specific colony, whether or not that number decreases or increases. So hopefully in that way we kind of contribute a little bit to science.
Yeah, so it is used as a scientific tool as well as a creative tool, the drones that we use.
Yeah. And in terms of the underwater, like Colin said, we have an underwater housing for our camera, and it's quite cold, so it can be quite tough having that underwater. But sometimes we can wear dry suits and keep warm that way when we're in the water and capturing.
We don't do
imagery.
any diving, so it's all very much just ourselves in the water, sort of hands under, kind of body under, as opposed to sort of deep diving. But that's maybe not something we would rule out in the future, perhaps. But not quite at this stage. We just like dip ourselves in for a short period of time and get out.
Yeah.
And you mentioned you guys are working on a short film around Bass Rock. When might people be able to see that, or is there a kind of plan in place for festivals and different things?
Yeah, well, we're kind of at a finished first draft stage, if you will. But we think we might be returning to Bass Rock, so we might do a little bit more footage, but we're kind of hoping we'll be able to release it next year. We're quite excited about it, and it's kind of been a personal project, a long time coming. So we're quite excited, and most likely we'll put it out through the film festival circuit and see what happens. But we're really excited about it.
Thank you very much, guys. If you're on Facebook, any kind of feedback and comments and stuff is in the chat. So I just want to say thank you so much for a really insightful talk. Thank you everyone at home who's watching. Just to reiterate, the exhibition is on until the 19th of September here at Harbour Arts Centre. There's also an exhibition by Victoria Claire Burney, also on at the Harbour Arts Centre, and we'll be doing a live event with her next week as well. So do check that out on our website. So, and if you can't make it to the Harbour Arts Centre, I should say, there has also been a 3D tour done of the exhibition which you can view on our website, so do check that out. So just once more, thank you guys so much for joining us. Thank you for the great talk. Thank everyone for watching, and see you next week. Thank you very much. Bye.